So today I have Robert with me. Robert is 20, going on 21, and he has been graduated for how many years? 2? 2 years. He's in college. He's going to graduate this year and be a nurse. And so, with the theme of doing hard things, I thought that having Robert on and having Ted on later would be very helpful, just to hear the perspective from my son's perspective again. So I'm going to ask him questions and he's going to answer as best he can, and we'll go from there. Okay, so Rob, what's one hard thing that you had to do growing up that you didn't want to do at the time, but now that you're grateful for?
When going into my going into my senior year, we switched churches, and the church that my parents wanted to go to was not one I was particularly excited about.
Why weren't you excited about it?
Our previous church had a lot of youth ministry and things that I had built good community around, and this church didn't value or doesn't value the separating ages. It's more of everyone all together. Mm-hmm. And so I wasn't a huge fan of that, but now I see the value in that. I see that there is a lot more value in a church that does not separate all of its ages and be teens with teens, kids with kids, young adults with young adults, middle-aged adults with middle-aged adults, and older adults with older adults. Like that, everyone is in fellowship with each other, and just learning that, and just learning that church that we go to now has definitely helped me grow spiritually.
Okay.
Since moving.
So it was hard from a social perspective. You were leaving behind all the friends that you had made at the previous church and leaving behind the programming that they had, but you were exchanging that for something. Would you say it was richer, or that it is richer?
Yes, far richer. Because even at our old church, I didn't find the biblical spiritual teaching particularly helpful, useful. I thought it was very it was all very immature, not on my level. Mm-hmm. And
kind of shallow, maybe.
Yeah, shallow. And this church that we're at now is completely the opposite. Their 5th grade class goes deeper than the adult Sunday school classes at our previous church.
Yeah.
So
I would say that's true.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So Rob, when you were younger, what are some of the things that we did, that me and Dad did, that helped push you through challenges and helped you to push through instead of just giving up?
When those things happened, I feel like, especially considering school and even now in college, where my mom isn't really part of my college education, just talking things through and making plans and ways, practical ways of how we'll get something done. I remember being really nervous going into nursing school, of just not knowing how I was going to do and whatnot. And I even remember times even before that of big projects, just talking through it, and it wasn't an emotional therapy session where it'd be oh, it'll be fine, you'll do great, you'll make it through it. It was no, here's how we'll do it, step by step, piece by piece, which I think is a lot more helpful than a therapy session of you'll do great.
Okay, so instead of just giving an emotional pep talk, it was helpful to you to have Dad and I break things down. Step 1, step 2, step 3, make an action plan.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay. So a lot of kids today really seem to, and honestly adults too, seem to avoid doing hard things. So why do you think we're avoiding doing hard things, and what helped you to personally face that instead of avoiding them?
I personally think that the reason kids avoid doing hard things is because their parents avoid doing hard things. I would say I was able to get through that because a lot of the times I saw my mom and dad doing hard things in all different parts of their lives.
Like what? Give a couple of specifics.
Mom starting businesses, dad going through the process of finding a new job after he had decided to quit his previous one, which was a scary time for him because he doesn't have the bachelor's degree that a lot of other people want in a corporate world, and he was nervous about that, but he had all the experience he needed. So he was perfectly capable, but it's definitely an uncomfortable circumstance, and I think a lot of people get stuck in an in-between of like, it's not, this isn't so bad that I want to step out into the unknown, but this isn't so good either that I want to like stay here, and then it kind of leaves them stuck.
So
in
complacency.
An in-between. Yeah, complacency. And so I saw my parents doing hard things, and like I said, different aspects of that, like completely different things. Like I talked about the kind of like job things, but also like with the house we're at now, like we sold our house and got all that stuff ready in like a week. Like that's the first thing that's coming to mind, right? Of like, we weren't afraid of that. And then also, my mom and dad have always been encouraging of me doing hard things. They've been encouraging of me hunting, which is a hard thing. And I ran a marathon. That's a hard thing.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking about.
Yeah, like I wanted to do a marathon, and I wanted to do that because I've seen my parents do hard things previously, but they weren't. I've told other people that, and they'd be like, why would you do that? And I've looked down at those people because I'm like, the question like, why would you do that, like would have stopped a lot of people. Like, I'm sure back in the early 1900s when people were talking about like new technology trying to get us to the moon, people would be like, why would you do that?
Yeah.
But like doing hard thing, like we would not be where we are as a civilization if people didn't do hard things.
Right.
And
so a refusal to accept mediocrity.
Yes.
Okay, good stuff. Okay, Robert, can you think of a time when doing something hard changed the way you thought about yourself?
So when I was probably 14, I got into running, and I wanted to run a 10K. And I had trained for months to do it. I was feeling confident. I had ran the distance before, and I was right where I was at, like where I wanted to be. And then I think it was like a week before it happened, I like sprained my ankle really bad, and I was put in a boot. And of course, doctor said don't run that, right? And I asked, can I walk it? Because I had spent the money, right? Like that was my money that I spent to do that race.
And the time training.
Right? So I wanted to at least walk it. And doing that was very hard, not because, it was not physically challenging. It was mentally challenging, knowing that I had put in the work, I had put in the effort. I could have gotten, a time, under an hour, which I thought was great, and it was 2 hours, and I walked, and maybe my ankle wasn't in pain the whole time, like it was hardly in pain, but just like if I were to start even doing a light trot, like it would have not been beneficial. And so it was a humbling experience of just not getting what, right, like we all feel like we should get what we deserve. And that was a time where you put in the work, you feel entitled to do that race, but like it just it's not how life worked then.
Yeah, it wasn't how life worked.
I've ran that same 10K now, I think 3 or 4 times afterwards, and
vindication.
And I've ran a half marathon, I ran a marathon, like so like it wasn't like an end to something. It didn't make me stop, but it was a humbling experiencing, just knowing that like life doesn't always work that way.
Yeah, well, and it's also teaching you that just because it didn't work out that first time doesn't mean that it can't work out the next time. And you didn't quit. You kept going, and you got to that marathon, which, I mean, that's crazy. And it was in a hilly area. It wasn't flat, so it was even harder. It was his first one, but if you had just given up because you were discouraged that you were injured, then
I never would have gotten there, or probably much else in my physical aspirations.
Right. Yeah. It was kind of like a keystone for all of that. Okay, Robert, so what is one piece of advice that you would give to parents who are raising children and they want their children to do those hard things and not give up?
I would say one of the reasons that people have set, like, I blame this on why people say that I'm so disciplined and I'm so willing to do hard things, is because when I was probably 13 or 14, my mom let me read autobiographies of Navy SEALs and just like war heroes, and it kind of lit a fire under me in a way of like that I want to do things like that. Like, I want to be getting up early. I want to have a great physique. I want to have just have that discipline to do like the very best I can do, and learn the phrase discipline equals freedom, which some of you may know from the author Jocko Willink, but I would argue that it's also biblically rooted in scripture. And so and I don't know about recommending that parents to let their kids read a bunch of war stories and autobiographies
first.
Right, because there is a lot of mature content, but I know there are some people like that who have written kids books that like same message, but it's not about war stories. It's like a fictional. So but I don't know, like being a young teenager, like, and then seeing like men that like I want to be like that early on, who are doing like the hardest things, where they're saying like, oh yeah, the basic training that everyone says is like Hell Week. It's like, oh, that's easy compared to your actual deployment, right? Like, that makes you want to do hard things in return, and doesn't have to be the hardest thing, but like doing the math lesson when you really don't want to. Like, that was a big thing for me, of like getting up, and like I made the routine of like, I hated math so much, I did it in the morning so I could just be done with it. Like,
and Robert is one of my only students who would purposely get up. So how early were you getting up sometimes to get your school done?
6 was usually my thing, and then probably my senior year I started doing like 5:45. Okay. I've recently gone back to 6, because the 15 minutes doesn't make a whole lot of difference, and I feel like it's since it's a round number, it's easier, but probably like 6.
Okay, so Robert would get up at 6, and he would get all of his schoolwork done, and then he would have the rest of the day to work on running, to hunt, to fish. Robert is an avid outdoorsman, so he really understood that concept of time management, that if he can get the worst things done first, he has the freedom for the rest of the day to follow his own pursuits. And he really tapped into that and worked that system hard. Okay, Robert, so what role do you believe faith has played in you learning to do hard things?
As a Christian, and being a Christian Reformed, having Reformed theology, I believe man's chief end is to glorify God and enjoy Him forever. And I believe God created us for work. Like, we were supposed to work before sin came in. Like, we were built for it. We were built to do work. And just kind of like how I said about like the Navy SEALs and reading those autobiographies, I had a very good in high school small group that I went to, where we went through Joshua to First Kings in probably a year and a half, 2 years, just reading it slow. And this guy who was in the army, and he was a military contractor, walking us through that, and just seeing the stories, like that section of scriptures where you see some of the most hardcore, like strongest men in the Bible. You have Joshua, you have Phineas as in like the guy in Joshua, not Samuel, but Phineas and Samuel, he sucks. Don't be like him. But Samuel, David, and his mighty men, right? Like all people who did hard things, like did the hardest things, in that like they had battles, and then like people like David who was not only went out and did battle, but when Saul was hunting him, right, he did the hard thing and not killing him,
right,
and letting him live. And so just looking at those, Hebrews 12 talks about the hall of faith, and looking at all these men of faith that did very hard things, and and are recognized in Hebrews 12, and like we're supposed to look up to those people, like if in a football game, right, you have like banners of the greatest players before them, on that team, right, like that's like where we're supposed to, like, we're playing the game, we're playing, like, we're going through life, and we're supposed to look up at those Old Testament heroes, figures, and we're supposed to imitate them, and in the ways the Bible makes clear we're supposed to imitate them in.
Right. Okay, Robert, this is the last question that I have for you. So looking back, what's a hard thing that you're proud of accomplishing as a homeschooler that kids in public school might not get to experience the same way?
So my senior year, I had to write a senior thesis.
I knew you were going to say that.
And it was for CC, and you can go find all the videos on what we think about CC through the channel. But
so wait, I just want to clarify. So those opinions on CC are not just my opinions. Are they shared by you as well?
Yes.
They are. So you can check that out here, yes, and over there.
And I'm sure you can ask Ted about it, and he'll say the same thing. But anyway, so we had to do a senior thesis, and it was definitely hard, but when it came to, I tried to be very on top of it, and when I mean on top of it, like I just from like the beginning of the year to the end of the year put like 30 minutes a day to it, and 30 minutes of a year is nothing, but when you add it up through a school year, it's like
tremendous amount
it's
of work.
A lot of work.
Yeah.
But I started like week 1, going forward, and so I remember it was funny, like and it was definitely hard. It was hard to do the research. It was hard to find my sources, and just but it was really funny. I remember like where we were supposed to, like probably 2 weeks before we were supposed to have a rough drafts finish, my mom like asked me like, hey, how are you doing your senior thesis? And I was like, oh, good, like I'm almost done writing the rough draft, like it's going great. And then she was like, oh, good, because some of the moms have told me like their kids haven't even started, like they don't even know what they're writing on yet. And I was like, oh, well, good luck. But I mean, it was definitely hard, and I enjoy writing, but I'm not like good at it as like in like the grammatical sense, and like I just like to write about what I want to write about. So I'm not, so I mean, so that part is hard, and going through editing and like how I could say these things better. And then we had to go up and give like an excerpt from it, and then there were several adults who had read the whole thing through and had questions, and I had to defend my
And what was your
position.
What was your topic?
My position is like the picture of, I don't remember the exact like thesis, but the theme of it was like the true picture of masculinity when it comes to like, you know, a fictional character, was Aragorn in Lord of the Rings. And since writing that, I've watched numerous YouTube videos where they state the same thing.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like I was even watching a video the other day of where like an army ranger, you know, was kind of like, you know, dunking on like the like fake, you know, alpha male. Mm-hmm. It was like, if y'all want to know what like a true alpha male looks like, Aragorn. Lord of the Rings. So like that is what like every man should aspire to be like. But I was just writing that and just showing like his character that that, you know, mirrors Christ, and that, and just like, and masculine traits. Mm-hmm. Like just using examples, like not that like he's, you know, he's a good fighter, you know,
right.
like, but like having the temperance, right, like knowing
mm-hmm.
when to fight and when
right.
not to fight,
right.
And treating people right, like
mm-hmm.
like, or dealing with hard people,
mm-hmm.
like people like Boromir, who's just a power hungry person,
mm-hmm.
you know, but and just dealing with him kindly and lovingly, and like, but also ready, like if Boromir like starts acting crazy, mm-hmm. like he is willing and ready to like take him on,
right.
Which is depicted in the movie and the books.
Mm-hmm.
But that whole experience, I think, was good, because I don't think, I don't know because I wasn't public school, I don't think public schoolers are really suited to be able to argue what they believe. I think they have strong opinions, but I don't think they're founded and they know how to argue them. Mm-hmm. And I've actually used it in multiple scenarios of work where like my boss might be like kind of pushing me around a little bit, and I'm like, hey, no, you can't really do this, like I like it, like, and you know, there was a problem with my boss like last year, and I actually wrote an email to him and his boss saying like, hey, the ways you're acting are not in line with this company's values, and so like I need your leadership to like represent this company the way you want it to be represented. Mm-hmm. And I think I wanted to do that through stuff like the senior thesis. I also did debate like in middle school. Mm-hmm. And so just like learning actually how to like not just say like, hey, this is unfair, mm-hmm. right, like being whiny and entitled, but just saying like, hey, like making an argument that like, you know, a leader, a boss of a company can't really like, oh no, you've got a point, like he's not, you know, acting mm-hmm. in accordance to these company values, and so he's right. And so I think that's a great opportunity homeschool parents have to give to their, mm-hmm. of like teaching them how to not necessarily like rebel against authority, mm-hmm. but like
hold
understand
the authority to a standard.
Hold the authority to a standard, and like and being able to have boundaries that mm-hmm. are founded on principle,
right? Not
just like, this isn't fair. Like I feel like this isn't fair.
Right. So facts, not feelings.
Yeah, I mean, and like, you know, people like bosses would push me around and like schedule me for days or times I said like, I'm not working that, mm-hmm. and that's what I did. I said, hey, it's documented, it's in writing that I can't work, you know, these hours, so you're gonna have to take me off. Right. And it's not like I guess I'll do it because he scheduled me. It's like, no, you're not gonna push me around like that. Right. So
homeschooling, basically, you're saying, helped you to learn leadership, because that is what it is fundamentally. When you're holding authority to a standard that authority created. I mean, they didn't necessarily create the company standards at the YMCA, but you're holding the leadership to the standard that everyone was under, and that in and of itself is a form of leadership. Yeah. So there you go, folks. Leadership.
Yeah. And I would also say too, like, you know, everyone says like, oh, the problem with homeschooling is like the social life is like learning, like if you don't know how to interact with the world because, you know, if you never go outside or whatever. And it's like, but I would argue, like, I started working as like a lifeguard at 15, and so I was able to learn, you know, professionalism and dealing with people who I know don't maybe share the same, beliefs about God or even political views, right? Of like entering that very young and just treat them the way I want to be treated, and like true like professionalism,
right?
Like at a young age. And so like I don't think homeschooling like really hindered my social ability, right? But it's also your parents being willing to let you enter the workforce at like a young age, like I was,
right? So. And being careful too about which places.
Yeah.
There's some things there that I would do differently. Not the YMCA I felt like was a good.
Yeah, I mean,
was a good fit.
Yeah, it wasn't bad.
Yeah. Okay, well, thanks, Robert, for coming on and sharing your thoughts. I know that all the homeschool moms watching appreciate your time. And next, we'll have Ted.